Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 286. Thank you for tuning in. Happy Friday. Hope you guys have had a good week. I'm going to pick up where I left off in the last podcast. In the past couple of podcasts, we've been talking about the national debt, the deficit. We've been talking about DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And I'm going to continue talking about this. I'm probably going to talk about this on Monday. On Monday, I really want to go through and explain how we've created 36.5. By Monday, it'll be 0.5, $36.5 trillion in national debt, where this came from, how we created this. And this is a very important issue to me. And if you've been listening or watching my podcasts over the years, you know this is a very important issue to me. I've been talking about this for years, for a long time. I think that this is the biggest threat to the United States. This is the biggest threat to our sovereignty. This is the biggest threat to our national security. I think that the national debt is a huge deal, and I'm going to explain where this came from in the next podcast. We'll talk about that on Monday. Donald Trump and the executive branch trying to rein in this debt is a problem, because Democrats are making the case that Article 1 gives Congress control of the purse strings of the country, and that Congress is responsible for managing the debt and for the budget. Not solely. The president of the United States has to sign it, but even if the president doesn't sign it, if they have enough members of Congress, they can override a veto from the president of the United States. So the president of the United States does play some role, but Democrats are right that Article 1 of the Constitution gives Congress control of the budget, of the debt and the deficit, and they're the ones who've run up our debt. They have an approval rating that is in the teens. They've run up our debt in the past 25 years, along with the executive branch. We're going to talk about that on Monday. But it is a challenge for the executive and what Donald Trump is trying to do through DOGE, because Democrats are right that the Article 1 of the Constitution gives them control. We actually have control. The reason that the Constitution gives, particularly the House of Representatives, and all spending bills are supposed to start in the House of Representatives. The reason that it gives them so much control, because the House of Representatives, that's what I was trying to explain in the last podcast, that there's 435 districts, congressional districts in the country. You live in the United States, you live in one of those congressional districts. And if you don't know what your congressional district is, or who your representative is representing your congressional district, that's a problem. It's a huge problem. Americans need to understand this stuff, but they don't want you. That's how they've gotten away with this stuff for over 25 years, because they don't want Americans to understand this stuff, to understand how government works. The real reason that Article 1 gives the House of Representatives control of the purse strings is because the House of Representatives, they are the closest to the people. The real managers of the budget, of the purse strings, of the debt, are the American people. It's us. That's why the House of Representatives, that the representatives have to come, and every 2 years, they have to be reelected by the constituents in their district, that they have to come back to the people in their district and answer to the people in their district. How did you manage the government's finances? How did you manage my finances, my tax dollars? Every 2 years, they have to come and be reelected. And you keep sending these people back over and over again, and this is what you get. But the Democrats are screaming constitutional crisis now. It's all about the constitutional crisis, and this is nothing new. They've been screaming constitutional crisis whenever there's something going on that they don't like. It's a constitutional crisis. It's not a constitutional crisis yet. They do have a point that Congress is responsible for the purse strings, but this is just complete hyperbole. Let's take a listen.
We might be on the path to a constitutional crisis.
We will ask
and
two
notice the
experts
date
about
up here.
whether or not this is a constitutional crisis.
We've never faced quite the constitutional crisis that we do right now.
They are fomenting a constitutional crisis.
Yes. Are we staring down the barrel of a constitutional crisis?
This is an existential constitutional
2018.
The constitutional crisis, possibly.
The constitutional crisis alarm bells are ringing. But is anybody listening?
We're now like one subway
2019
stop from a real constitutional crisis.
We are in effect, a constitutional crisis.
Constitutional crisis. We're hearing it over and over again.
We're hearing it
already said that.
We're hearing it over and over again. Yes, we're hearing it from you, mockingbirds, over and over again. We're hearing it from you over and over again.
Office. She said that he belongs in prison. She says that we're in a constitutional crisis. If that's not enough to begin an impeachment inquiry, then what on earth is?
Warnings of an impending
2020,
constitutional crisis ripped through the nation's capital.
There are experts who are saying this is a constitutional crisis.
We are at a dangerous time in our history, a constitutional crisis that probably is the most severe moment since the Civil War.
New warnings of a constitutional crisis.
It jumps from 2020 to 2025. Notice that. There were no constitutional crises when Joe Biden was the president of the United States. But it goes from 2020 to 2025.
New warnings of a constitutional crisis just weeks into Trump's second term.
The stage is set for a constitutional crisis.
Could this signal the start of a constitutional crisis?
Legal experts say our country could be headed toward a constitutional crisis.
So this video, people were sharing this video. If you don't remember, this was the Sinclair, I think this was Sinclair media video that went viral of all of their outlets using the same language, the same talking points. And this is an example of what the media is doing with this narrative about constitutional crisis.
Our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to 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 our democracy.
These are mockingbirds.
Extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is how the mockingbird media works. And this is what they're doing with the whole narrative of the constitutional crisis. There is no constitutional crisis. It's complete hyperbole and fear mongering. And it's not just the media. It's also members of Congress. They're the ones who are leading the media. The media is part of the Democratic Party, the mainstream media. If you have any doubt about that, just wait until the end of the podcast, because I'm going to give some credence to the fact that the Democratic Party, the media, is part of the Democratic Party. But take a listen to this clip.
We are 3 weeks into the second Trump presidency, 3 weeks. And tonight there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis.
What's Elon Musk going to do with Social Security numbers or anything else?
Well, I think there are two issues at play. The constitutional crisis here is that Congress has been subverted.
That is a constitutional crisis. That is a crisis for our democracy. We've got our toes right on the edge of a constitutional crisis.
So you see the Democratic Party saying constitutional crisis. The media is mocking. They're the mockingbirds, and they are repeating what the Democratic Party is saying. Their talking points: constitutional crisis is what they continue to say. And then we talked in the last podcast about the tools that Democrats were going to use to fight back against the president of the United States and DOJ and their attempts to downsize government. And we talked about the litigation and using the courts to slow down the president of the United States, what they were going to do in Congress, and shutting down the government is their threat. And then the mobilization, communication and mobilization. So this past week, we have seen some of the mobilization. And these are basically, there's the resistance is weak. It's a weak resistance. They haven't seen the type of mobilization that they want. Now, the mobilization that they really want, they want 2020 Black Lives Matter type of violence and protests in the streets. That's what they really want. But this is what they're getting. And it's mostly members of unions, people that they can call together to go out and protest. This is not grassroots. This is AstroTurf. But take a listen.
Hey, ho, ho. Elon Musk has got to go. Hey, hey.
Ho, ho. Elon Musk has got to go.
Hey, ho, ho. Elon Musk has got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho.
This is the resistance. This is the mobilization that they've been able to muster. This is another union, AFGE, that they got to protest maybe, I don't know, 60 people that they had out there protesting this week. I don't know. It's hard for me to
turn on the audio. Sorry about that. Another live event.
Maybe that's 80 people.
As the Democrats are protesting the Department of Government Efficiency.
And then so they're protesting. These members of this union that they call out to protest, the Democrats have mobilized them to come out and protest the Department of Government Efficiency. So this is the resistance here. And this is that same union when they're grandstanding, and then this went viral. This is a little song that they were singing up there while they were resisting.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against Joe.
Oh my God.
Elon Musk. No Elon's kept within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk.
So which side are you on? They're on the side of government. They don't want government to be cut. Okay. So this is the resistance. This is the resistance right here. This is the mobilization part of the Democrats' plan. And like I was telling you in the last podcast, that even Chuck Schumer, so I was explaining to you how even some Democrats are coming out now because they're caught. They're caught. They're coming out now and they're saying, yeah, this guy has been in Congress forever. He's been the, if not the majority leader, the minority leader forever in the Senate, the Democrats' leader in the Senate. And he is finally admitting that, yes, there's some waste and abuse in the federal budget. Yes, there needs to be cut. But like I was saying in the last podcast, they're saying we need a scalpel. We want to cut with the scalpel. We don't want to use a machete. He says meat cleaver here. But what he's saying is the same thing that Bill Maher was saying in his show last week, is that yes, we admit that there's waste. We admit that there's abuse and even fraud. But we don't want to use a meat cleaver, as Chuck Schumer says here. We want to use a scalpel. We just want to cut a little bit. Well, why haven't you guys been cutting a little bit over the last 25 years? If you guys would have been using a scalpel over the last 25 years, there would be no need for a meat cleaver now. But now you see the Democrats coming out and admitting because the American people are behind what DOJ is doing. Take a listen to Chuck Schumer here.
The bottom line is simple. Everyone knows there's waste in government and should be cut, but DOJ is using a meat axe, and they're cutting things that are efficient and effective. I was in Albany and Syracuse on Monday talking at community health centers. Many of them have had their funds cut temporarily. Some even hasn't been restored yet.
It's temporary. It's temporary. But notice what he says. Everyone knows that there's waste in the federal government, and that needs to be cut. But Elon Musk and the Trump administration are using a meat cleaver. They're trying to cut too much. Yes, because we're at a point where you need to cut a lot, where you need to take drastic action because you guys haven't been doing anything for the past 25 years. If you say that everyone knows that there's waste in the federal government, why haven't you done anything about it before now, before Elon Musk starts looking at the books and seeing exactly where this waste is? Why haven't you, if you've known this, Chuck Schumer, if you've known that there's waste in the federal government, why haven't you done anything about it now, before now?
Is simple. Everyone knows there's waste in government and should be cut.
Everyone knows there's waste in government that should be cut. It's just we want to use a scalpel and not a meat cleaver is what he says. Well, you should have been using a scalpel over the last 25 years. You weren't doing that. So this is the press conference that, and this is why that Chuck Schumer is admitting this now, and you'll see other Democrats admitting, yeah, Elon Musk is right, that, yeah, we need to cut some of the federal budget and this waste and abuse and fraud. It needs to be cut. You'll see some Democrats admitting that now, but we want to use a scalpel, not a meat cleaver, not a machete. And the reason these Democrats are admitting this now, and you see Chuck Schumer doing this, is because they are busted. I want you to hear what Elon Musk says. This is the Oval Office press conference that they did. This was impromptu. I don't know. He brought his son in there, so I don't think this is a plan. But Trump's been doing daily press conferences in the Oval Office. Why wasn't Joe Biden doing daily press conferences in the Oval Office or doing press conferences at all? I mean, everyone's talking about the Associated Press being kicked out of this press meeting that he's been doing in the Oval Office. Only in the Oval Office. The Associated Press is now not allowed in the Oval Office or the gaggle that is on Air Force One. And everyone's crying, oh, that's a violation of the First Amendment. No, it's not a violation of the First Amendment. They still have access in the press room like all of the other media. They just don't have access to the Oval Office and to Air Force One. They still have the same access that the majority of other media and even more. I mean, there's a lot of media outlets that don't even have access to the press room. The Associated Press is in the press room. They just don't have access to the Oval Office, and they don't have access to Air Force One, to the Air Force One gaggle, because they refuse to call the Gulf of America the Gulf of America. Anyway, Trump's been doing these press conferences in the Oval Office every day, giving the media access, allowing them to ask questions, something that Joe Biden never did, rarely did. He was incapable of doing. And this was something that was said by Elon Musk in this Oval Office press conference. Take a listen.
And also, could you mention some of the things that your team has found, some of the crazy numbers, including the woman that walked away with about $30 million?
Right. Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth.
Who's he talking about? He says we've got people here who make $200,000, $250,000 a year government salaries that are career politicians like Chuck Schumer's that have net worths in the 20, 30, Nancy Pelosi, $200 million. How do you have $200 million in net worth when you've been making $200,000 a year as a career public servant? Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and many others. That's what Elon Musk is referring to here. And that's why Chuck Schumer is coming out now saying, yes, we do understand that there's waste in the budget that needs to be cut, but we want to use a scalpel, not a meat cleaver. They understand that they're busted. How do you have $30 million in net worth, Chuck Schumer, and you have been in Congress your entire life on a $200,000 salary? Where'd that come from? Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, where'd that come from? That's what Elon Musk is talking about here.
30 million.
Right. Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth.
200 million, Nancy Pelosi, 200 million. $200 million. Nancy Pelosi is worth $200 million.
In the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is, what happened at USAID. We're just curious as to where it came from.
Where it came from?
Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why.
Yeah. Why? Why are they getting wealthy? Why are they getting wealthy while the country is getting more broke? While the country is getting more in debt. And that's what you have to understand, that this 36, and I'm going to explain it more on Monday, how we built this $36 trillion. This $36 trillion that goes onto the debt line of the public treasury. This is wealth transfer. This money went somewhere. It went into somebody's pockets. Yes, it's on the debt line in the public of the United States public treasury. It's our debt. But where did this money go? Where did all of this $36.5 trillion go? This made a lot of people rich. This is wealth transfer. It's transfer from the public treasury, from the American people into private hands. That's what Elon Musk is talking about here. You're just going to figure out where you got all that money from. Multiple people. And this clip went viral of Maxine Waters. Again, another one, career politician, worth millions of dollars. She's been in Congress for 30 years and on a $200,000 salary. Where'd all your millions come from, Maxine Waters? Listen to what she says here.
People of this country are being violated because all of our privacy is being.
So that's the thing. Okay. So, and that's the lawsuit that they sued the Trump administration, all these AGs that got together, Democratic AGs get together to sue to slow down Donald Trump, to slow down Doge. So the narrative is our privacy, that Doge has access to all of our privacy. Are you kidding me? So since when do Americans care about privacy? You're telling me that the people that ignored Edward Snowden's revelations, the people that use Gmail as their primary email, you're worried about privacy? Who's worried about privacy in this country? You're worried about your social security number for what? You worried about your bank account? Google has all of that. They have all of that. Everything about you that is able to be known is known by the tech oligarchs. You're crazy if you think that you have privacy. There is no privacy, but that's the narrative that they're using to get injunctions. It's the American people's privacy, my privacy. It's ridiculous.
People of this country are being violated because all of our privacy is being taken up by.
You didn't care nothing about our privacy when you're passing defense authorizations to strengthen the 702 authorizations of FISA. You didn't care nothing about Donald Trump's privacy when Barack Obama was spying on him in his campaign in 2016. Oh, now it's all privacy, our privacy.
People of this country are being violated because all of our privacy is being taken up by Elon Musk and Trump, and we don't know what all they have on us. We don't know what all they have on us.
We don't know what all they have on us, is what she says. That's Freudian right there. That's Freud. We don't know what all they have on us. We don't know what all they have on us. So where'd you make all those millions? Where'd you make all those millions, Maxine Waters, on a salary of a public servant for 30 years in Congress on a $200,000 salary? I mean, we don't know what all they have on us. It is very interesting time to be alive. Like I was telling you, that Doge and Donald Trump on this issue, they have the American people's support. And like I was saying in the last podcast, particularly the young people, because you guys have riddled the future generations, the children of the Gen Z millennial generation, their children's children are going to have to pay for this and will be enslaved to whoever owns this debt. That's what I'm telling you, that this is the biggest threat to American sovereignty is this debt. And that's why I was explaining to you in the last podcast that MAGA is rock and roll. MAGA's punk rock. MAGA's hip hop in the 1980s. MAGA is the new thing. It is sweeping the globe. Make Europe great again. Make England great again. That everybody wants to return to sanity. And this debt is a huge issue. This debt has really struck a chord with the American people. I want you to take a look at this clip. Scott Jennings doing what he does, laying waste on CNN. I mean, the only reason, if you watch CNN, the only reason to really watch CNN is to watch Scott Jennings just destroy these people on a nightly basis. But take a listen.
Look, I think this is absolutely America first. It's needed policy, and it's what people have been asking for years. And honestly, politicians have talked about doing this for a very long time. The only difference is they never do it. You've had presidents from both parties say, I'm going to make the government smaller. I'm going to go in and look at the bureaucracy and make it more efficient. I'm going to trim where I can, trim the fat. No one ever does it.
No one ever does it.
Committees meet, people have phone calls, press conferences are held.
25 years.
Nothing ever happens except the government gets larger and larger.
Nothing ever happens. They've been talking about it for 25 years, Chuck Schumer. Yes, he says, yes, we know, everybody knows that there's waste in the federal budget. But Elon Musk is using a meat cleaver, is what Chuck Schumer says. Yes, he's got to use a meat cleaver now. After 25 years of this, you guys haven't balanced the budget. You haven't cut anything. You've been talking about it. Plenty of people, like Scott Jennings is saying here, plenty of people have talked about it, been talking about it for 25 years. What have you guys done? Nothing but grow the government, grow the debt, grow the deficit. That's all you guys have done. And yes, plenty of people have talked about it, but you haven't done anything. So again, back to the constitutional crisis. The crisis now is that the job of the purse strings, the job of the budget, and what is going to be spent by the federal government belongs to Congress. It belongs to this is Article 1 of the Constitution. It belongs to the House of Representatives the House of Representatives who have to start these spending bills. It goes to the Senate, and then the Senate passes it, and then it goes to the President of the United States for his signature. That's the way it works. Now that the executive branch is trying to do oversight and go through these line items and expose them and make cuts where he can, stop some of the spending where he can, this is the constitutional crisis that the Democrats are talking about. Take a listen.
Okay, so this is the case brought by 19 states' attorney generals, Democrats all, challenging Musk and Trump and the Doge guys going into the crown jewels of the Treasury Department, the checking account of the American government. And it gets to first principles, right? The argument is Congress was given by the framers the power of the purse, the power to appropriate and the power to cut. And you can't just zero out line items like that. There's no Supreme Court case that says a president can just shutter down an agency or a department of the government. There's no Supreme Court case that says the president can refuse to spend monies appropriated by the people's representatives in Congress. He's doing this deliberately to change that.
Absolutely right. He's doing that deliberately to force the courts to say what he can do and what he can't do. And there's no constitutional crisis. Because, I mean, up until now, I mean, he has been abiding by what the courts are saying. But what you got to understand is, like I was explaining to you in the last podcast, that they go around shopping for the judges that they want. There's a judge in the Fifth Circuit that they want. Then they go to a district in the Fifth Circuit, find a district judge that was appointed by Obama, appointed by Clinton, appointed by Joe Biden, and then they file in that court. This case that he's talking about, this are multiple different AGs, and they filed this this case and got an injunction from a district judge. And the district judges are not supposed to be able to have all of this power over the executive branch. Now, it goes to the appellate court, gets to the Supreme Court. This is the argument that the Trump administration is making, that carries more weight than some low-level district judge that is trying to issue an injunction on his executive authority and his executive power. And Donald Trump is not going over the heads of the judicial branch. He's not trying to listen to what Donald Trump says here when he's asked a question about, is he going to abide by what the courts say? Take a listen.
If a judge does block one of your policies, part of your agenda, will you abide by that ruling? Will you comply?
Well, I always abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it. But
I always abide by the court. She's asking him directly, are you going to abide by, and you're talking about districts, the way it works. Go to districts, and it goes to the appellate court, from the appellate court to the Supreme Court. So he's saying, yeah, I mean, these low-level district judges that are issuing these injunctions, that are they're political appointees, they're acting political. These Democrat operatives are going out shopping for the judges that will do their will. So, I mean, everyone knows that's what's happening. Listen, he knows what's going on.
If a judge does block one of your policies, part of your agenda, will you abide by that ruling? Will you comply?
Well, I always abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it. But then what he's done is he slowed down the momentum.
Slow it down.
And it gives crooked people more time to cover up the books.
He knows exactly what they're doing. The whole objective of using the courts and going out and shopping for the judge, the district judge that you want, the political appointee that you want to issue this injunction. Even, I mean, if it goes to the appellate court and it takes time to get to the appellate court, it takes time to even get some of these things to the Supreme Court, if it has to go that high, that time is slowing down his agenda. It's slowing down the pace that Doge can go through and look at all of this waste, fraud, and abuse. And he realizes that's what's going on. I mean, Trump's no fool. He's had 4 years to think about this.
Have to appeal it. But then what he's done is he slowed down the momentum. And it gives crooked people more time to cover up the books. You know, if a person's crooked and they get caught, other people see that, and all of a sudden it becomes harder later on. So, yeah, the answer is I always abide by the courts, always abide by them, and will appeal. But appeals take a long time, and I would hope that a judge, if you go into a judge and you show him, here's a corrupt situation, we have a check to be sent, but we found it to be corrupt. Do you want us to send this corrupt check to a person, or do you want us not to give it and give it back to the taxpayer? I would hope a judge would say, don't send it, give it back to.
So, I mean, where's the constitutional crisis? Why is that a constitutional crisis? It says, I always abide by what the judges say. I realize that they're trying to slow us down. I'm going to appeal it. But, I mean, this doesn't make sense, is what he's saying. And then J.D. Vance, who is a lawyer who was in the Senate, he stirred some feathers when he tweeted this out. If a judge tried to tell a general how to conduct a military operation, that would be illegal. If a judge tried to command the attorney general in how to use their discretion as a prosecutor, that's also illegal. Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. So this is, I mean, J.D. Vance tweeted this out and everybody, constitutional crisis. But he's right. J.D. Vance is right. If it was a Supreme Court, even if it was a appellate court, maybe I would make the case. But these district judges, these political appointees that that Democrats have gone out and shopped around for the judges that they want to stop the agenda of the executive. Yes, the Congress, and Article 1 says that Congress is the one that allocates this money, appropriates it for specific purposes, but the executive branch is the one that pays it out. And what Trump is saying is that You find out that some of this money that Congress has appropriated was appropriated for corruption. If this money was appropriated for things that go against the interests of the American people, does the executive still have to pay it out? That's the question. So, and the lower level district judge says, no, you can't stop those payments, is what the political appointee lower level district judge wants. And then it takes time. Trump's going to appeal it. It's going to go, and then the Supreme Court's ultimately going to decide this. But what you're saying is that until the Supreme Court decides this, that I have to pay out this money that we've identified that it's going towards corruption. That's the constitutional crisis, people. That's the constitutional crisis. AOC, the gift that keeps on giving. The more she talks, the more she gives you gifts. She's the gift that keeps on giving. And this was something that AOC was saying after the Supreme Court ruling. I guess this was on the abortion pill. Who knows what it's from? But the Supreme Court ruled and not in favor of Democrats. And this is what AOC says.
There has been thought, I believe, given to this. Senator Ron Wyden has already issued statements, for example, advising what we should do in a situation like this, which I concur, which is that I believe that the Biden administration should ignore.
So it says right here, this was a Texas judge, probably a district judge as well. So this is the same situation. Texas judge rules to suspend approval of abortion pill. DOJ can appeal. Washington, so this is a Washington judge, says judge can remain on the market in at least 12 blue states. So I don't know. I guess the Texas judge ruled that they had to suspend, and this is what AOC is referring to here.
There has been thought, I believe, given to this. Senator Ron Wyden has already issued statements, for example, advising what we should do in a situation like this, which I concur, which is that I believe that the Biden administration should ignore this ruling. I think
ignore the ruling is what AOC says. Constitutional crisis. Constitutional crisis. Ignore the ruling is what AOC says.
I concur, which is that I believe that the Biden administration should ignore this ruling. I think that the courts have the legitimacy and they rely on the legitimacy of their rulings. And what they are currently doing is engaged in an unprecedented and dramatic erosion of the legitimacy of the courts. It is the justices themselves, through the deeply partisan and unfounded nature of these rulings, that are undermining their own enforcement.
So you're saying the Biden administration should ignore this court, but what does that look like? What does that actually mean?
I think the interesting thing when it comes to a ruling is that it relies on enforcement.
Listen to what she's saying.
The Biden administration to choose whether or not to enforce such a ruling.
Listen to what she's saying. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's up to the Biden administration to choose. So the government doesn't have any, the judiciary branch doesn't have any enforcement tools, is what she's saying. This is what Andrew Jackson said. That's what Andrew Jackson said before he initiated the Trail of Tears. That the Supreme Court has no enforcement tools. Constitutional crisis. That's what AOC is saying. That the court has no enforcement tools to enforce Biden to do what they haven't mandated that he do. So Biden should just ignore the courts, is what AOC says. Constitutional crisis. So this was I wanted to play this clip. This clip is a montage of Democrats talking about fiscal responsibility, talking about balancing the budget, talking about getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal budget. Democrats, mind you. Something they've been talking about. Now, it starts with these two guys, with Bill Clinton and Al Gore in the 1990s. And in the 1990s, you remember Bill Clinton and Al Gore in the late 90s, they had a Republican Congress that was led by Newt Gingrich. We're going to talk about this on Monday because I'm going to tell you how we got here. how we got to $36.5 trillion. But back here in the late 1990s, in the last 3 years of this administration, the Clinton-Gore administration, and with Newt Gingrich, they did balance the budget. Like I told you in the last podcast, the last time that the budget was balanced and we actually had a surplus in those last 2 years of Bill Clinton's administration, surplus, not a budget deficit. We had surpluses. Balanced budget in 2000 was the last year. So with Congress and with the goals set out that you're going to hear Gore and Clinton talk about here in this clip, they were able to balance the budget. They brought down the deficit, but there's some interesting things that were going on in the 90s. The country was in a different place in the 90s. And the first, and I'm going to give you a little preview what we're going to get into on Monday. The very first thing that you have to understand about the 90s that allowed them to do this was that the country was at peace. That we were fighting no wars in the 90s. No wars. The Cold War was over. So all the spending that we were doing to build up our arms during the Cold War, once the USSR fell, then all of that money that we were spending to build up our arms for the Cold War, we were able to reinvest back in the country. We were able to do other things with that money. So that led to a large part of the balanced budgets and the surpluses at the end of the Clinton administration. We're going to get more into that on Monday. But I want you to listen to this clip.
This report tells us how to cut waste, cut red tape, streamline the bureaucracy, change procurement rules, change the personnel rules, and create a government that works better and costs less.
I've read it, and where it says the president should, the president will.
Among the 800 recommendations, eliminating 12% of the federal workforce, merging some government agencies.
Recommendations, eliminating 12% of the workforce. Interesting.
Workforce, merging some government agencies like the FBI, the DEA, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, closing hundreds of government offices outside Washington.
From the day I took office, one of the
here's
commitments
Obama.
that I made to the American people was that we would do a better job here in Washington in rooting out wasteful spending. We thought that it was entirely appropriate for our governments and our agencies to try to root out waste, large and small, in a systematic way.
You didn't do it.
It means cutting some programs that I think are worthy, but
cutting some
we may not be able to
programs
afford right now.
But we can't
A lot of
afford.
the action is in Congress and legislative, but in the meantime, we don't need to wait for Congress in order to do something about wasteful spending that's out.
In the meantime, we don't have to wait for Congress to do something about wasteful spending, is what Obama said.
Legislative, but in the meantime, we don't need to wait for Congress.
Constitutional crisis.
Programs that I think are worthy, but we may not be able to afford right now. A lot of the action is in Congress and legislative, but in the meantime, we don't need to wait for Congress in order to do something about wasteful spending that's out there. We haven't seen as much action out of Congress as we'd like, and that's why we launched on our own initiative the campaign to cut waste.
We haven't seen much out of Congress. That's why we have launched our own initiative from the executive branch, is what Obama says. Now, to be fair, going back to Clinton Gore, when they said this, they did it. They actually balanced the budget in their last 2 years, had a surplus, and they did what they said they were going to do. There was a problem with that, and we're going to get into that on Monday. Obama also made an effort. He attempted to get rid of the waste and abuse in the federal budget and bring down the deficit. And I was explaining that to you in the last podcast when I was talking about Simpson-Bowles. The Simpson-Bowles Commission was created by executive order by Barack Obama. So Simpson-Bowles was a bipartisan presidential commission on deficit reduction created in 2010 by President Barack Obama to identify policies to improve fiscal situation in the medium term and to achieve fiscal responsibility over the long run. the 18-member commission. So these are 18 members that by executive order, Obama created this commission. The 18-member commission, consisting of 12 members of Congress. 12 of the members of the commission were members of Congress, and then 6 of them were private citizens. First met on April 27, 2010. Now, what happened to Simpson Bowles? I was explaining in the last podcast, I said that it had something to do that their recommendations for them to be implemented. Here, let's just read this. It says it right here. The commission's recommendations were politically controversial. Under the executive order that created the commission, a supermajority of 14 of the 18 commissioners had to agree on the recommendations before it was sent to Congress for a vote. In a vote on December 10th, the commission fell short of the requirements with only 11 out of the 14 they needed. They needed 14 of the 18 on the commission to approve this plan so it could go to Congress to be voted on, and they only got 11. Actually, I have a clip that explains this. Take a listen.
And next to economic policy and the nation's debt and deficits. More than 9 months after it was created, today was the day for President Obama's bipartisan fiscal commission to put its plan up for a vote. Here again is Judy Woodruff.
11 of the commission's 18 members supported a blueprint for fiscal austerity offered by the co-chairman. That was 3 short of the supermajority needed to trigger an up or down vote in Congress. Still, co-chair Erskine Bowles, a former Clinton White House
Democrat.
chief of staff,
So it's bipartisan. It is bipartisan. Bowles is a Democrat and Simpson Republican. So that was the theory of getting it together. We have to really tackle this. We need to be working together. We need Democrats and Republicans to work together. Everybody's going to have to give something.
Bowles, a former Clinton White House chief of staff, insisted the commission delivered a wake-up call to the country.
I think people really believe that this is the moment of truth, that the threat of these deficits are real.
Wow.
The solutions
this was 15,
are absolutely going to
15 years ago, people. This was 15 years ago. The national debt back then was like $12 trillion something. $12 trillion. It's $36.5 trillion now. This was 15 years ago that he's saying that these debt and deficits are a huge problem, that they tried to put together a commission to handle this.
of these deficits are real. The solutions are absolutely going to be painful. There's no way around it.
The solutions are going to be painful. He's a Democrat. The solutions are going to be painful, and that is very important. There's going to be pain. The reason that they couldn't get this commission's their proposal in front of Congress, and they only got 11 out of the 14 that they needed because of the 7 that voted against it. Some of them are Republicans, some of them are Democrats, is that they didn't want the pain. They didn't want to deal with the pain. The Republicans didn't want to deal with the pain of raising taxes because there's going to have to be more revenue and taxes raised to handle this. And the Democrats didn't want to deal with the cutting of spending and cutting of programs and the pain of that. And that's going to have to happen as well. There's going to have to be both. You're going to have more revenue, and you're going to have a reduction in spending to tackle this. And there's going to be pain. And like I was explaining to you in the last podcast, we should have in 2008 and 2009, when we had the financial crisis and the crash, we should have had the pain then. We should have taken the pain and the peel then. But no, we kicked it down the road. That was what people were saying. We're kicking it down the road, the pain down the road, kicking it down to future generations, to our children, to our children's children. They're going to get the pain because we're not going to accept the pain right now. We want to still live, high on the hog with our negative interest rates, with cheap debt, with, booming stock market. We want to have the fun now, and we'll kick the pain down the road. But eventually there's going to be pain. And that's what Bowles is talking about here, that to get this done, there's going to be pain.
Chief of Staff insisted the commission delivered a wake-up call to the country.
I think people really believe that this is the moment of truth, that the threat of these deficits are real. The solutions are absolutely going to be painful. There's no way around it. And there is no easy way out.
Republican co-chair Alan Simpson, a former Wyoming senator, had a more colorful view of the outcome.
We took a big banana and threw it into the gorilla cage. And the gorilla has picked it up like they do. They peel it, mash it, play with it, but they will eat some. And that's where we are right now, and so it is with this. Many pieces of this will be digested.
It's going to have to be.
And nourish this country.
15 years later. We're 15 years later from when Alan Simpson is saying this, that 15 years later, that some of those pieces of what we're talking about in the Simpson-Bowles Commission and what we've come up with, that they're going to be digested, and the American people are going to digest it. And 15 years later, we're dealing with it now.
Nourish this country.
Those pieces included recommendations to raise the retirement age to 68.
Raise the retirement age to 68. Why? Why raise the retirement age to 68? Because people, this is the majority. You're talking about USAID and Department of Education and all this. I mean, that's actually using a scalpel and trimming across the edge. Now, national defense, everyone's talking, especially Democrats, we need to cut the defense. Well, Trump has already agreed that we need to do an audit of the defense. The Pentagon has failed 7 audits. And I mean, there's so much waste and abuse and fraud in the Pentagon, and Trump is committed to going in and looking at this 13% of the federal budget in the Pentagon, along with what's going on with the discretionary spending. 11% of the budget, $1 trillion, is servicing the debt. But the real, if you want to use a meat cleaver, you want to use a machete to cut the debt, it's right here. It's right here, the entitlements. 50% of the budget is entitlements. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So that's why one of the hardships, one of the painful things that are going to have to be done is dealing with Social Security. And that was one of the plans that Simpson-Bowles, one of the proposals that they came up with 15 years ago is raising the retirement age.
Included recommendations to raise the retirement age to 68 for full Social Security benefits by 2050, reduce future increases in Social Security benefits, and eliminate some tax breaks and curb others, including the child tax credit and mortgage interest deduction. In exchange, the plan calls for corporate and individual income tax rates to be simplified and cut.
So that's why some of the Democrats on the commission didn't vote for it, and some of the Republicans didn't vote for it. The Republicans didn't like this part, the tax cuts, and the Democrats didn't like this part. And everybody's going to have to give something. There's going to have to be some negotiation to do this if we're really serious about this, and we better be serious about it. Now, Elon Musk, I think that he's having a lot of fun with Doge and what he's doing. I don't necessarily think that he has nefarious intentions. I don't fully trust him. I don't fully trust any of these people, quite frankly. I watch and I see what they do, but he's having a lot of fun, and he's giving his opponents ammo with stuff like this. And I didn't know there was a Gaza province of Mozambique. Did you know that there was a Gaza province of Mozambique? But the Doge team found that there was $50 million of condoms that were purchased to go to Gaza. And Elon Musk thought that it was Gaza in the Middle East. And he tweeted out that $50 million in condoms went to Hamas. $50 million in condoms did not go to Hamas. $50 million went to a province in Africa, Mozambique, that is ironically named Gaza as well. And it went there because of AIDS, to protect for AIDS. It's still, $50 million in latex. I mean, that's a lot of condoms. I mean, again, I don't care what the line item says in a lot of this. I don't care what the line item says. There needs to be tracks to find out if this money actually went to what the line item says. But things like this, and Elon Musk tweeting out $50 million went to Hamas for condoms. This gives the Democrats fuel. This gives them ammo. And I think that this is a misstep by Elon Musk that he needs to tighten up. And I think that he knows that. They challenged him on that in the Oval Office meeting that he had the other day. But we're finding out a lot of this money from different agencies, not only from USAID, but from different agencies, are going to news outlets. And I want to point this out. Hold on. I think that there was something else. All right, let me get into this. So some of this money that they're finding are going to news agencies, and Politico came under fire last week because they found this line item in USAID where Politico was being paid $8.2 million just last year in the Biden administration. And all of this didn't come from USAID. This came from other agencies as well, but $8.2 million. Now, this became such a controversy that the CEO of Politico issued a statement on it. I'm going to read a little bit of this statement. It says, Politico has been subject of debate on X this week. Some has been misinformation and some has been flat out false. Let me set the record straight. So Elon Musk and his Doge team were making a big deal about Politico receiving this money. Again, not only from USAID, from Pentagon, from other agencies. And this goes back to what I'm talking about with this misstep with Gaza province and tweeting out that $50 million in condoms went to Hamas. So they put out this information about Politico and said that this $8.2 million came from USAID. It didn't all come from USAID. It came from other government agencies as well. But why is the government giving Politico, a news agency, any money at all? And that's what the CEO of Politico is making reference here to when he says flat out falsehoods. Again, Elon Musk with these missteps and he even says in the Oval Office that I'm going to be wrong about some of this stuff, but the more that you're wrong, the more ammo that you're giving these guys. So the CEO of Politico, that straight out falsehoods have been shared, accusing Elon Musk of sharing falsehoods about what's going on there. Politico is a privately owned company. We have never received any government funding. Okay. No government funding, no subsidies. Okay. No grants and no handouts. Not one dime ever in 18 years. Okay. So he's upset that people were saying that Politico got $8.5 or $8.2 million last year from the Biden administration, which we can see the line item here, buddy. So he's clarifying, well, where did that money come from? It's not funding. It's not a subsidy. It's not grants, and it's not a handout. But what is it? Millions of people around the world read our journalism on Politico.com, Politico EU, and in newsletters. It is supported by our advertising and our sponsors. So we're supported by our advertising and our sponsors. This right here. But he doesn't put but Politico Pro is different. But Politico Pro is different, which is Politico Pro is part of the Politico organization. It's just a different product. We have two different products, is what the CEO is saying here. We have our Politico.com product, our Politico EU product, and those products are supported by advertising and sponsorship. But Politico Pro, a different product, is a different product that we have. It is a professional subscription service used by companies, organizations, and yes, some government agencies. They subscribe because it makes them better. So then he goes into his pitch about this product, Politico Pro, and then he admits to the fact that that $8 million of government funds went into Politico's coffers through this other product, this subscription service, which is Politico Pro. But they weren't the only ones. Politico wasn't their only news agency to get money from the federal government. Why is the federal government giving any news agency any money? Why does the federal government need to subscribe to Politico Pro at a tune of $8.2 million? Associated Press. Look at this. Recipient, Associated Press, receiving money from all of these agencies, millions of dollars. BBC, not only domestic news agencies, foreign news agencies are receiving money. Look, this is what it says right here. This is from the BBC. Institutional funders remain our largest source of support. In 2023-2024, our main donors, this is BBC, include UK, FCDO, and USAID. And then you see this pie chart here. It shows you that USAID makes up the second largest funds that BBC, it says right here, BBC Media. Who else? Reuters got $9 million. This came a big deal, and people were putting this out yesterday. Came from Doge. $9 million. You look at here. This is what the line item says. What is Reuters getting $9 million for? Active social engineering defense. Large-scale social deception. So you see these arrows here, and why they're pointing these arrows here is because some scoop went out. Show you this. If I can find that again. So let me see if I can find that again because I didn't want to go out of that. But some scoop found out that that money that Reuters got, the $9 million, the line item was for 2018. I'm not going to be able to find that again. Okay, so it was 2018 is what that pertained to. Let me see, I'll find it. Here it is, right here. This is that or the tweet. So people think that they're being slick by pointing out that it was 2018, this Reuters payment. Anyway, I'll just bring this back up. All right, so active social engineering defense. So social engineering, large scale social deception. That's the purpose that this money, $9 million, was given to Reuters. And then you'll see here that the date is 2018, and people were coming out and saying, well, that was when Donald Trump was president the first time. That Donald Trump was the one who signed this bill to give this money to Reuters. But if you remember going back to the last podcast, I played the clip of Donald Trump signing the actual omnibus bill, the funding that, and he says, he admits nobody read this. Nobody knows what's in it. and he was forced to sign it because the government was about to shut down. Also, I wanted to point out that I said that we were on the 2025 budget in the last podcast. No, we're still on. They did a continuing resolution at the end of last year. We don't have a 2025 budget. The continuing resolution was for next month. So Donald Trump's in the same situation that he was in 2018, where they're trying to not only raise the debt limit, but also do a budget deal because we're on a continuing resolution right now. So that's the situation Donald Trump was in back in March of 2018. Same situation that he's in now, has to negotiate a budget. Paul Ryan and the Congress, they send him an omnibus with the military funding that he needed just before, hours before the government is about to shut down. Nobody read it. Nobody knows what's in it. He signs it to keep the government open. So people pointing out that this $9 million going to Reuters for social engineering and that it happened under Donald Trump, that means nothing. Donald Trump was forced to sign that huge omnibus that nobody read. So, but anyway, it's the $9 million that Reuters got was for social engineering and large scale deception. And so Reuters was getting money, BBC getting money, all these news agencies getting money. Wow, I'm way over. Well, I had a lot more that I wanted to share with you guys. I'm going to get back into this, not exactly this on Monday, because like I said, on Monday, I really want to explain how we amass $36 trillion, $36.5 trillion in debt. And we'll get into that on Monday. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.